Hey, what's up? My name's Larry, and I live in a small town called Maplewood, which is located in Ontario, Canada. It's not a place you would read about in travel guides, but it's home. I'm 32 years old. And yeah, life here is pretty much the same every day. Nothing too flashy, nothing too exciting. But that's just how I like it. Maplewood is the kind of place where everyone knows each other, where you can grab a coffee without worrying. If the barista remembers your name, it's simple, it's quiet, and it feels safe. But sometimes I can't help but wonder if I'm missing out on something more. But that's for another time. I work a regular job in an office doing technical stuff. It's not that my job is boring, but it doesn't exactly spark excitement either. I spend most of my days running errands and dealing with emails, the usual. To be honest, I don't mind it pays the bills, and that's enough for now. A little stability never hurt anyone. Right now about Jason's, a guy I met a few years ago in a pretty random way. I was on my way to work one morning when I saw him sitting on a bench outside a cafe, looking like he had a rough night or something. He was the kind of guy who would normally catch your eye because he looked like he belonged to a story. The kind of guy you just know has something going on, whether good or bad. So I offered him a ride. It wasn't a big deal, really. I was just trying to do something nice, and I figured why not. We got a talking, and the conversation clicked turnout. He was just a couple of years younger than me, but we both got along pretty easily. Over the next few months, we started hanging out more. We didn't have a lot in common. At first, I'm a bit more of a homebody, while Jason's more social, always out and about meeting new people. But that didn't stop us from becoming friends. In the end, we kind of balanced each other out. Jason's family situation wasn't exactly what you'd call ideal, and he didn't live with his mom, Mary. She lived in a separate house outside of town. Jason would visit her occasionally, but for the most part, he liked to keep his distance. Mary wasn't in the best health, and her car was old, always needing repairs. I could tell Jason cared about his mom, but he was also pretty busy with his own life, and I guess he didn't always have time to deal with her car issues. That's where I came in. One afternoon, Jason called me. He was at work, and his mom's car had broken down again. It wasn't anything serious, probably just something minor, like a battery issue. But Mary was really in need of a car, and she didn't want to wait in line at the local mechanic shop. It's always a hassle getting in there, so Jason asked me if I could go take a look at her car and help out. He couldn't make it himself, so he asked if I could head over and check on it. I didn't mind. It wasn't like I had anything else to do, and I knew Jason would do the same for me if I needed him. I told him I'd head straight over to Mary's place. Jason didn't live with her, so it was just me going over to see what was going on. Mary lived in a nice little house on the edge of town. It wasn't big, but it was cozy. The kind of place that looks exactly how you'd imagine someone's grandmother's house to look. Warm and inviting. When I arrived, she greeted me with a smile and thanked me right away. I could tell she was relieved to have someone come by and help out. Her car was parked in the driveway, and as I took a look under the hood, I noticed it wasn't anything too complicated, probably just a simple issue with the battery or something along those lines. While I worked on the car, Mary started talking to me. She mentioned how much she appreciated the fact that Jason had good friends like me. I could tell she was trying to be polite, but she also seemed a little nervous. Maybe it was just me, but she wasn't acting like the usual friendly neighbor you expect to meet when you're helping someone out. Still, I didn't think too much of it. She was an older woman, probably lonely, and a lot of people feel that way when they don't have family around to help. As I fixed a car, Mary kept asking me questions about my life. She was genuinely interested, and I could tell that she didn't have anyone to talk to regularly. I didn't mind, though. We talked about everything: work-town gossip, our mutual friends. The conversation wasn't forced, but there was an underlying tension in the air. I don't know how to explain it, but it was like she was trying to connect with me on a deeper level than I was prepared for. After a while, I finished fixing the car, and Mary insisted I stay for a cup of coffee. I wasn't in a hurry, so I agreed. We sat at the kitchen table, and she kept talking about her life. She mentioned how hard it was being on her own and how she missed the days when everything was more simple. I could tell she was lonely. I don't think she was looking for anything specific for me, but her words struck a chord. It was almost like she was looking for someone to open up to, and I get it. She was in her 50s, and living alone isn't easy. especially when you're stuck with just your own thoughts. But even though she seemed kind, there was something that made me a bit uncomfortable. I couldn't quite place it, but I felt like there was more going on with Mary than what she was letting on anyway. I finished my coffee, thanked her for the hospitality, and told her I needed to get going. As I walked out, I felt a weird mix of guilt and sympathy. I knew she wasn't expecting anything from me, but I still couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I called Jason on my way home just to let him know that everything was fine with the car. He was relieved and thanked me for helping out, as usual, but I couldn't get Mary's words out of my head. She'd been a little too open, a little too eager to connect, and in the back of my mind. I couldn't help but wonder if this was going to turn into something I wasn't prepared for, but I guess only time would tell. Hey again. It's Larry. So after fixing Mary's car and having that weird coffee with her, I try to forget about the whole thing. I mean, it's not like anything happened. Mary was just being well. Mary. Maybe she was just lonely looking for someone to talk to. I didn't think too much of it at first, but I kept getting this nagging feeling in the back of my mind that maybe I'd misread something I don't know. Maybe I was just overthinking it after all. Mary was Jason's mom, and she wasn't going to do anything crazy. At least that's what I kept telling myself. A few days passed, and I didn't hear anything from Jason. We talked here and there, but nothing out of the ordinary. That was until one evening when my phone buzzed with a text from him. Hey Larry, my mom wanted to thank you for helping her with the car. She was wondering if you'd like to stop by again sometime for dinner. I know she'd appreciate the company. I stared at the text for a moment. It wasn't unusual for Jason to suggest something like that. He knew his mom liked to have people over, but something about this just felt off. I couldn't exactly put my finger on it, but I knew I wasn't entirely comfortable with it. Mary had been friendly enough when I was there fixing the car, but dinner that seemed like a step further right. Maybe I was just overthinking it, though it wasn't like I had anything better to do. I debated for a while, honestly. I wasn't sure if it was a good idea, but in the end, I figured it might be a nice gesture. Jason had asked, and I knew his mom would probably enjoy it. Plus, I'd been raised to be polite, so I texted back and agreed. The next day, I drove to Mary's house again. The weather was nice, a bit too warm for late spring, but it wasn't unbearable. The house looked the same as it did last time, small, cozy, a little old-fashioned, but that gave it character. I parked in front, took a deep breath, and knocked on the door. Mary answered almost immediately. Larry, I'm so glad you came. She said, her smile wide. She was wearing an apron, and there was a faint smell of something cooking coming from the kitchen. Thanks for inviting me, I said, stepping inside. I could feel the usual sense of warmth that her house always gave off, but this time it felt different. Of course, it's been so long since we've had company, Mary replied. Leading me to the kitchen, she had set the table with care as though she'd been planning this dinner for days. It was just a simple meal, nothing fancy: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and a salad. But the effort she put into it was clear, and I felt a little guilty for wondering if she had any ulterior motives. We sat down at the table, and Mary started talking. She talked about her past, her marriage to Jason's dad, how they'd moved to Maplewood years ago, and how she'd ended up on her own after he passed away. There was something in her voice that made me feel a bit sad for her. It wasn't just loneliness, though. It was something deeper, almost like regret. She wasn't being dramatic about it, but I could hear the weight of her words. So what about you? Mary asked between bites of her meal. What's your story? What do you want out of life? I wasn't expecting a question, but I gave her a smile and shrugged. Not much, really. I mean, I'm happy enough with where I am. I've got a job, friends, a place to live. I guess I just go with the flow, she said thoughtfully, as if my answer was something she needed to reflect on. You know, it's good to have a plan. Most people don't realize how important that is. You've got to know where you're going, or else you'll just end up lost. I nodded. I wasn't one to engage in deep philosophical conversations, especially not over dinner, but I understood what she was saying. I wasn't exactly lost, but I wasn't sure if I was going anywhere either. After dinner, we moved to the living room where we chatted for a bit longer. Mary seemed to enjoy the conversation. I could tell she was doing her best to make me feel welcome, but something about the whole evening felt strained. Maybe it was just me, but I felt like she was trying too hard, trying to find some kind of connection with me. I try not to overthink it, though. Eventually, Mary stood up. "Would you like some dessert, Larry?" she asked, her voice almost hopeful. "I'm good. Thanks," I said, not wanting to overstay my welcome. It was getting late and I didn't want to seem rude, but I felt like I needed to get out of there. "But thanks again for dinner, Mary. It was really nice. I'm glad you could make it," she said, her smile a little more subdued. "Now you're always welcome here, Larry." I nodded and stood up, grabbing my jacket. "Thanks. I'll see you around." I left her house feeling a strange mix of emotions. Part of me felt sorry for her, but the other part of me felt uncomfortable. It wasn't just the dinner or the fact that she'd invited me over. It was how she'd looked at me sometimes, like she was waiting for something more. I didn't know how to explain it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was caught in something I wasn't ready for. On my way home, I called Jason. I wasn't sure what to say, but I had to talk to someone about it. "Hey man, just wanted to let you know. I stopped by your mom's place. Dinner was nice," I said. "That's great, man," Jason replied, not sounding as surprised as I expected. "She really appreciates you coming over. She said it went well. Yeah, she seemed happy," I said. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't help but wonder, was this just a friendly dinner, or was there more to it than that? Hey, it's Larry again. So after that dinner at Mary's place, I was still feeling a bit weird about the whole thing. It wasn't that she was a bad person or anything, far from it. She was kind, considerate, and probably just trying to be friendly. But there was something about the way she looked at me, something in her eyes that left me feeling uncomfortable. It was like she was trying too hard to make some kind of connection, and it was hard to ignore. I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe I had misread something. Maybe I had done something to give her the wrong impression. But at the same time, I kept telling myself I was just overthinking it. After all, she was Jason's mom. It would be ridiculous to think she had any ulterior motives. That was until a few days later when I got another text from her. It wasn't anything too strange at first, just a simple message asking how I was doing. But the more I thought about it, the more it bothered me. Why was she texting me so often? Was I reading too much into it? Maybe she was just being friendly. Or maybe she was just lonely and wanted someone to talk to. But it didn't feel like just casual conversation. There was an undertone to her messages that I couldn't ignore. I decided to give her a call to clear things up. I didn't want to be rude, but I couldn't keep letting this sit on my mind. I needed to know what was really going on. "Hey, Mary," I said when she picked up the phone. "It's Larry. How's it going?" "Larry? I'm so glad you called," she said, her voice sounding more enthusiastic than I expected. "I was just thinking about you. How have you been?" I tried to keep the conversation light. Good. Just keeping busy with work. You know how it is. How about you, everything?" "Okay." "Oh, you know," she said with a sigh. "It's been tough, but I've been doing all right. Jason's been away for work and it gets a bit lonely here sometimes. But I'm managing." I could hear the quiet sadness in her voice and it made me feel guilty. I didn't want to be the person who added to her loneliness, but at the same time, I wasn't sure what she was looking for from me. It felt like she was testing the waters, trying to see if I'd bite. "I get it," I said, trying to sound supportive without getting too involved. "I know it's tough sometimes, especially when you're on your own, but you've got your friends and family, right?" "You're not alone, I know," she replied. But her tone shifted a little. "But sometimes it's nice to have someone around, I appreciate you helping me with the car and coming over for dinner. It really meant a lot to me." There was again that hint of something more. She wasn't just thanking me for the help she was making. Sure, I knew how much it had meant to her, almost like she was trying to form some deeper connection. I didn't want to overanalyze it, but I couldn't help myself. I was starting to feel like I was in the middle of something that I didn't quite understand. "I'm glad I could help," I said, trying to keep things casual. I'm always happy to lend a hand." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and I could hear Mary breathing softly. It was almost like she was trying to find the right words. "Larry." She finally said, her voice quieter. "Now I was wondering, would you like to come over again sometime? Maybe we could just talk, have a drink or something, no pressure. Of course. I don't know. It's been a while since I've had company, and it would be nice to spend some time with someone who's easy to talk to. I felt not form in my stomach. This was exactly what I had been afraid of, that she was going to take things too far. I wasn't sure if I was ready for this, but at the same time, I didn't want to be rude. She was Jason's mom, and I didn't want to hurt her feelings. I don't know, Mary, I said carefully. I've been pretty busy with work lately, and I don't want to make things awkward. I really appreciate the invite, though. Oh, no. I didn't mean to make you feel uncomfortable, she said quickly. I just thought it might be nice, but if it's too much, I totally understand. Her voice was soft and apologetic, and I could tell she was trying to back off. But the damage had already been done. The line between friendly and something else had been crossed, and I didn't know how to fix it. Don't worry about it, I said. Try to ease the tension. I'll definitely keep in touch, though. It's just things are a bit crazy for me right now. She seemed to accept that, though I could still hear the disappointment in her voice. Okay, I understand. Just know that the offer stands. You're always welcome here. Larry. Thanks, Mary, I said, trying to sound sincere. I'll talk to you soon after hanging up. I sat in silence for a while, trying to make sense of everything. Was I overreacting? Was I reading too much into it, or was she really trying to make something more out of our connection? The whole situation was starting to feel like a mess. I didn't know how to untangle. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I had to talk to Jason. He needed to know what was going on. Or, at the very least, I needed to get his perspective on things. Maybe he could help me figure out what the hell was happening. I took a deep breath and dialed his number. Hey. Jason, I said when he picked up. I need to talk to you about something. Hey, it's Larry again. So after that phone call with Mary, I knew something had to change. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine. The whole situation was too weird for me, and I needed to figure out exactly where I stood with Mary. And more importantly, where Jason stood in all of this. It wasn't just about my comfort anymore. I realized I had to address it head on, no matter how awkward it would be. I decided to call Jason. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but it was better to talk things through than let fester. We had always been pretty open with each other, so I figured this conversation wouldn't be any different. Still, I was nervous. I wasn't sure how he'd react or if he'd even believe me. It wasn't like I was trying to cause drama, but I needed to get this off my chest. Yo, Jason. I said when he answered the phone, we need to talk, hey man, what's up? Jason's voice was casual, but I could tell there was a bit of concern in it. He knew me well enough to sense when something was off. I just got off the phone with your mom and there's something I need to tell you. I said, trying and keep my voice steady. Look, I know this sounds weird, but I think she might be crossing some lines. There was a pause. On the other end, I could hear Jason's breathing, and I could tell he was trying to process what I had said. What do you mean? He asked cautiously. I don't know, man. I said, running my hand through my hair. She keeps texting me, calling me, trying to make plans to hang out. You know, it's like she's trying to get closer to me, and after that dinner, I don't know, it's starting to feel off. Jason was quiet for a moment, and I could feel the tension building. I wasn't sure what he was thinking, but I knew this wasn't going to be easy to explain. Are you sure, Larry? He asked. Finally. I mean, maybe she's just being friendly. She's been alone a lot lately. I don't think she's trying to make things weird. She's just lonely. I could hear the uncertainty in his voice, and it made me feel even more uncomfortable. Jason didn't sound convinced, but I had to keep going. I get that she's lonely, but this doesn't feel like just being friendly, man. I said, trying to keep my voice calm. It feels like she's trying to make something more out of our relationship. I'm not sure if she's aware of it, but it's starting to make me uncomfortable. There was a long silence, and I could almost hear Jason processing everything. Finally, he spoke okay. Look, he said, I appreciate you telling me this, I really do, but don't think my mom would ever try to do anything like that. She's a good person, man. She's She's been going through a lot lately, and I don't think she even realizes what she's doing. I felt a bit relieved to hear him defend her, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I didn't know what her intentions were, but I knew I couldn't just ignore it. I get that, man, but I think she needs to be aware of how this is coming across. I said, I don't want to cause any drama or make things worse, but I think I need to distance myself for a while, at least until she realizes what's going on. Jason was quiet again, and I could tell he was processing everything I had said. It was clear he wasn't fully understanding what I was going through, but I hoped he'd come around. I didn't want to make things weird between us, but I couldn't just sit back and pretend like this wasn't bothering me. I'll talk to her, he said. Finally, I promise I'll bring it up with her, but I don't want you to feel like you can't be around. Man, you're my friend, and you've been there for me for a long time. I just don't want this to ruin our friendship, you know? I know, man, I don't want that either. I said, feeling the weight of the situation on my shoulders. I just think I need some space right now. I'll be fine. I just need to figure out how to navigate this. Yeah. I get it, Jason said. I'll let you know how things go with her. Thanks for being upfront with me. Larry, I really appreciate it. After the call. I sat in my car for a while, staring out the windshield. I wasn't sure where the next step would be, but I felt like I had done what I could. Talking to Jason had helped to clear the air a bit, but I still wasn't sure where Mary's head was at. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about Jason too, and if things went sideways, it could affect both of us. I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief knowing that Jason was going to talk to her, but I still had a nagging feeling in the back of my mind. I wasn't sure what to expect from Mary, but I knew that whatever happened next, it was going to be a conversation I couldn't avoid for much longer. The situation wasn't over, and I wasn't sure how it would end, but for now I had done all I could to make sure I wasn't crossing any lines. I just hoped Mary would understand where I was coming from. Hey, it's Larry again. I'm not gonna lie. These last few days have been some of the most awkward and stressful of my life. I've had so many things running through my head, and I was just trying to figure out where things would go. Honestly. I was hoping for some kind of resolution, but deep down I wasn't sure how it would end. It had been a mess. There was only one way to truly clear things up, and that was facto-facis with Mary. After I talked to Jason, I felt like I'd done what I could, but I still wasn't sure if Mary understood the gravity of the situation. I needed to talk to her, no more second-guessing or avoiding it. If I was on to feel comfortable again, I had to be honest with her and make it clear that there were boundaries. I was hoping Jason would talk to her, but I knew it was up to me to step in and set the tone. The day had finally arrived and I was dreading it. I had asked Mary if we could meet for coffee just to have a casual chat, and she had agreed. I tried to keep my expectations low, but I knew this conversation was going to change things one way or another. I arrived at the small cafe we had agreed to meet at. The place was quiet, just a few people scattered around, sipping their drinks and talking. Mary was already sitting at a corner table when I walked in, her warm smile greeting me. As soon as I spotted her, I walked over and sat down, feeling the tension in my chest. Hey, Larry, she said, her voice as friendly as ever. How have you been? It's been a while, yeah, I've been good. I said, trying to sound casual, but I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't just a casual conversation. I had a lot to say, and I needed to say it in a way that didn't come off as harsh, but still made the point clear. So I began trying to keep my voice steady. I've been thinking about everything, and well, I think we need to talk. Mary raised an eyebrow, her smile faltering slightly. She could tell I was serious. Okay, she said. What's on your mind? I took a deep breath. I just want to be honest with you. Mary, I know things have been a little weird between us lately, and I need to tell you how I'm feeling her. Expression shifted, and I could see her trying to read me. I had never been this direct with her before, but I had to do it no more, beating around the bush. I don't want to make you uncomfortable, I continued, but I think the way you've been reaching out to me, it's been a little much. I don't know if you realize it, but it's starting to feel like you're crossing some boundaries." Mary looked down at her coffee, her fingers tracing the edge of her cup. She was quiet for a long moment, and I could see the wheels turning in her head. "Larissa," she started, her voice softer. "Now, I didn't mean to make things weird. I don't know. I guess I've been feeling a little isolated lately, and when I'm around you, it feels different. You've always been so kind to me, so easy to talk to, but I get it. I've been too forward." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I could see the vulnerability in her eyes, and it made me feel bad for even bringing it up. But I had to stay firm. "I understand that I said trying to keep my tone as gentle as possible, but you have to understand that I'm not in the same place as you. I'm not looking for anything more than friendship." Mary nodded slowly, her face flushing slightly as if the weight of the situation finally hit her. She had always been so confident, so sure of herself, but now she looked a little unsure. "I get it," she said quietly. "I never meant to put you in an uncomfortable position. I guess I got carried away." I felt a sense of relief wash over me. This was the moment where everything had to be laid out on the table. I didn't want any more misunderstandings, no more awkward tension hanging between us. "Look," I said, leaning forward slightly, "I'm really glad we could have this talk, but I think it's best if we both just take a step back and really think about what we want from this. I don't want to lose our friendship, but I need to make sure we're both on the same page." She smiled faintly, her eyes a little sad, but she nodded in agreement. "Yeah, I can see that I don't want to lose you as a friend either." For the first time in a long while, I felt like we were on the same wavelength. It was a relief to know she wasn't angry or upset. I knew that things were a little awkward, but it was better this way than leaving everything unspoken. The conversation didn't go exactly how I expected, but it was a weight off my shoulders. Mary understood where I was coming from, and I had made sure she knew exactly where I stood. I wasn't angry, and I didn't want to make things harder than they needed to be. But it was clear that things between us needed to stay friendly, no more, no less. As we finished our coffees, we talked about other things about life, work, and random stuff like we always had. The vibe was back to normal, but I knew things had shifted. I couldn't pretend like everything was the same, but in some ways that was okay. Sometimes things had to change for the better, and I hoped that this conversation was the turning point we both needed. I walked out the cafe with a clear mind. The awkward tension had been lifted, and I felt lighter. I had no idea what the future would hold, but I was finally at peace with how things had ended. The situation wasn't easy, but I knew I had done the right thing. I had addressed the issue directly, and while it wasn't the easiest conversation to have, I was confident that it was the best way forward. I didn't know if Mary and I would ever be as close as we once were, but I knew that the boundaries were clear now, and that was enough for me. The friendship was still there, and that was all that.